This video is for educational purposes. Algiers is the capital and largest city of Algeria. The city's population at the 2008 census was 2,988,145, and in 2020 was estimated to be around 4,500,000. Algiers is in the north-central part of Algeria. Kindly subscribe to this channel and share this video with your friends and families. Algiers is situated on the west side of the Bay of Algiers in the Mediterranean Sea. The modern part of the city is built on the level ground by the seashore. The old part, the ancient city of the days, climbs the steep hill behind the modern town and is crowned by the Kasbah or Citadel, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, 122 meters, 400 feet, above the sea. The Kasbah and the two keys form a triangle. The city's name is derived via French and Catalan Alger from the Arabic name Al-Jazir, the islands. This name refers to the four former islands which lay off the city's coast before becoming part of the mainland in 1525. Al-Jazir is itself a truncated form of the city's older name Jazer Bani Mazgana, Islands of Banu Mazgana, used by early medieval geographers such as Muhammad al-Idrisi and Yaqut al-Hamawi. The name was given by Bulagan ibn Ziri after he established the city on the ruins of the Phoenician city of Icosium in 950. During Ottoman rule, the name of the capital, Al-Jazair, was extended over the entire country, giving it the English name Algeria derived from the French name Algerie. In classical antiquity, the ancient Greeks knew the town as Icosium, ancient Greek, Kappa Sigma Iota Omikronu, which was Latinized as Icosium under Roman rule. The Greeks explained the name as coming from their word for 20 Epsilon Kappa Omicron Sigma Iota, Icosi, supposedly because it had been founded by 20 companions of Hercules when he visited the Atlas Mountains during his labors. Algiers is also known as El Beja, the Joyous, or Algiers the White, French, Alger la Blanche, for its whitewashed buildings. The city's earliest history was as a small port in Carthage where Phoenicians were trading with other Mediterraneans. After the Punic Wars, the Roman Republic eventually took over administration of the town, which they called Icosium. Its ruins now form part of the modern city's marine quarter, with the Rue de la Marine following a former Roman road. Roman cemeteries existed near Bab el-Oued and Babazoun. The city was given Latin rights by the Emperor Vespasian. The bishops of Icosium are mentioned as late as the 5th century, but the ancient town fell into obscurity during the Muslim conquest of the Maghreb. The present city was founded in 944 by Bulagan ibn Ziri, the founder of the Berber Zirid dynasty. He had built his own house and a Sanhaja center at Ashur in 935 just south of Algiers. Although the Zirid dynasty was overthrown by Roger II of Sicily in 1148, the Zirids had already lost control of Algiers to their cousins the Hammadids in 1014. The city was wrested from the Hammadids by the Almohad Caliphate in 1159, and in the 13th century came under the dominion of the Zianid sultans of the Kingdom of Tlemcen. Nominally part of the Sultanate of Tlemcen, Algiers had a large measure of independence under Thalaba emirs of its own due to Oran being the chief seaport of the Zianid. The Pennant of Algiers, an islet in front of Algiers harbor, had been occupied by the Spaniards as early as 1302. Thereafter, a considerable amount of trade began to flow between Algiers and Spain. However, Algiers continued to be of comparatively little importance until after the expulsion of the Moors from Spain, many of whom sought asylum in the city. In 1510, following their occupation of Oran and other towns on the coast of Africa, the Spaniards fortified the islet of Penn and imposed a levy intended to suppress the Barbary pirates. In 1516, the Emir of Algiers, Salim B. Tumi, invited the Corsair brothers Auric Reis and Hayreddin Barbarossa to expel the Spaniards. Auric Reis came to Algiers, ordered the assassination of Salim, and seized the town and ousted the Spanish in the capture of Algiers 1516. Hayreddin, succeeding Arij after the latter was killed in battle against the Spaniards in the 1518 fall of Tlemcen, was the founder of the Pashalik, which subsequently became the Beylik of Algeria. Barbarossa lost Algiers in 1524 but regained it with the 1529 capture of Penn of Algiers, and then formally invited the Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent to accept sovereignty over the territory and to annex Algiers to the Ottoman Empire. Algiers from this time became the chief seat of the Barbary pirates. In October 1541 in the Algiers expedition, the King of Spain and Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, sought to capture the city, but a storm destroyed a great number of his ships and his army of some 30,000. chiefly made up of Spaniards, was defeated by the Algerians under their Pasha, Hassan. Formerly part of the Ottoman Empire but essentially free from Ottoman control, starting in the 16th century, Algiers turned to piracy and ransoming. Due to its location on the periphery of both the Ottoman and European economic spheres, and depending for its existence on a Mediterranean that was increasingly controlled by European shipping, backed by European navies, piracy became the primary economic activity. Repeated attempts were made by various nations to subdue the pirates that disturbed shipping in the Western Mediterranean and engaged in slave raids as far north as Iceland. By the 17th century, up to 40% of the city's 100,000 inhabitants were enslaved Europeans. The United States fought two wars, the First and Second Barbary Wars, over Algiers' attacks on shipping. Among the notable people held for ransom was the future Spanish novelist, Miguel de Cervantes, who was held captive in Algiers for almost 5 years and wrote 2 plays set in Algiers of the period. The primary source for knowledge of Algiers of this period, since there are no contemporary local sources, is the Topographia e Historia General de Argel, 1612, but written earlier, published by Diego de Hidalgo, but whose authorship is disputed. This work describes in detail the city, the behavior of its inhabitants, and its military defenses, with the unsuccessful hope of facilitating an attack by Spain so as to end the piracy. A significant number of renegades lived in Algiers at the time. Christians converted voluntarily to Islam, many fleeing the law or other problems at home. Once converted to Islam, they were safe in Algiers. Many occupied positions of authority, such as Samson Rolli, an Englishman who became treasurer of Algiers. The city under Ottoman control was enclosed by a wall on all sides, including along the seafront. In this wall, 5 gates allowed access to the city, with 5 roads from each gate dividing the city and meeting in front of the Quechua Mosque. In 1556, a citadel was constructed at the highest point in the wall. A major road running north to south divided the city in two: the upper city, Algebal, or the mountain, which consisted of about 50 small quarters of Andalusian, Jewish, Moorish, and Kabyle communities, and the lower city, Al-Wada, or the plains, which was the administrative, military, and commercial center of the city, mostly inhabited by Ottoman Turkish dignitaries and other upper-class families. In August 1816, the city was bombarded by a British squadron under Lord Exmouth, a descendant of Thomas Pellew, taken in an Algerian slave raid in 1715 assisted by men of war from the Kingdom of the Netherlands, destroying the corsair fleet harbored in Algiers. The history of Algiers from 1830 to 1962 is bound to the larger history of Algeria and its relationship to France. On July 4, 1830, under the pretext of an affront to the French consul, whom the day had hit with a fly-whisk when the consul said the French government was not prepared to pay its large outstanding debts to 2 Algerian merchants, a French army under General de Bourmont attacked the city in the 1830 invasion of Algiers. The city capitulated the following day. Algiers became the capital of French Algeria. Many Europeans settled in Algiers, and by the early 20th century they formed a majority of the city's population. During the 1930s, the architect Le Corbusier drew up plans for a complete redesign of the colonial city. Le Corbusier was highly critical of the urban style of Algiers, describing the European district as nothing but crumbling walls and devastated nature, the whole a sullied blot. He also criticized the difference in living standards he perceived between the European and African residents of the city, describing a situation in which the civilized live like rats in holes, whereas the barbarians live in solitude and well-being. However, these plans were ultimately ignored by the French administration. During World War II, Algiers was the first city to be seized from the Axis by the Allies in Operation Terminal, a part of Operation Torch. In 1962, after a bloody independence struggle in which hundreds of thousands, estimates range between 350,000 and 1,500,000, died, mostly Algerians but also French and Pieds Noirs. During fighting between the French army and the Algerian Front de Libération Nationale, Algeria gained its independence, with Algiers as its capital. Since then, despite losing its entire Pied Noir population, the city has expanded massively. It now has about 5 million inhabitants, or 10% of Algeria's population, and its suburbs now cover most of the surrounding